I'm going to illustrate the power of understanding packet structures and structure preserving shuffles. And I suppose you could call this the ultimate 4-card Monty. As you can see here, I have 2 queens that have been captured by a pair of nefarious jacks. If you would rather have the queens capturing the jacks, just switch their positions, and that would work equally well. Despite their most strenuous efforts, the queens cannot escape without your help. The astonishing truth is that we will rescue the queens from the jacks without knowing exactly where the queens, and for that matter the jacks, are located at the end. How would this even be possible? How can we separate the queens from the jacks without knowing where any of the specific cards are located? The key is to not focus on particulars, but on structure, structure preservation, and/or structure conversion. In other words, we adopt a category theory perspective, focusing on objects and mappings of objects. Okay, that's enough math nerdiness. We need to execute our rescue plan immediately. So let's get to work. Your job is to follow where the queens are at all times so that you can make judicious choices that will guarantee the success of our rescue plan. So we'll go ahead and gather up the cards. Okay. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to perform what's called an LR shuffle, left, right. And now you're free to stack these from left to right or right to left, but remember you're supposed to be keeping your eye on the queens. Have you lost them already? Let's just show you here. Okay, that's where they are. One's on top, one's on bottom. Okay, so how would you like these stacked? Left on right or right on left? Left on right. Okay, should we do another one of those? Okay, left, right, left, right. How would you like these stacked? Right on left this time. Okay, that's just fine. We can also do an even up jog in which we jog forward the even position cards. How would you like these stacked? Right on left. Okay, we do another one of those. Okay, right on left again. That's very good. We can do a Pharaoh shuffle. Have you seen this before? This is where you split it in half and we'll have the cards perfectly interlaced. Okay, so that's one Pharaoh shuffle. Would you like to do a second one? You would. Okay, so let's spread them out like this. And maybe we'll interlace them differently this time. That's just fine. We'll do a down-under shuffle, which is kind of a fun one. Down, under, down, under, down. Last one goes on top. I sure hope you know exactly where those queens are. We can also do a Charlier 1 shuffle, which is a fun one. We can do something called push-off pairs. How would you like these stacked? Right on left? Okay, very good. We can deal out into 4 piles, like this. We can stack from left to right or right to left to right. Okay. We can also do some additional stacking if you would like. It's called leapfrog stacking. Would you like to do that? Which direction? Right to left? Okay, so this is where this card leaps over its neighbor, lands there. This one leaps over its neighbor, lands there. How would you like these stats? Left on right? Okay, I sure hope you kept your eye on those queens because we're coming to the end here. And then what we could do is something called a hypercoat. And a nice way to do that when you have 4 cards is to just randomly choose any of the card suits. And we'll go ahead and just spell them out a couple of times. So of the 4 card suits, which one would you like to use? Hearts? Okay. So H-E-A-R-T-S. Okay, we do a second one of those. H-E-A-R-T-S. Okay. Would you like to do any more of the mixing that we've shown you? Once again, I hope you know where the queens are. One more? One more what? Down, under. Okay. So this is where we go down, under, down, under, down. Last one goes on top. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to try to separate the queens from the jacks. And I'll do that by just taking the packet and I'll take the top and bottom cards off as one, and then the other 2 cards will be the other pile. Okay? So let's just set those right there. So did we succeed in rescuing the queens from the jacks? Yes, we did actually. How could I possibly know that? Do I know where the queens are? I haven't a clue. I just know that we separated them from the jacks. How can I know that without specifically knowing where they're located? Well, access my playlist on Bessey sequences and Quasi-Bessey sequences to learn more about invariant structures and structure-preserving shuffles. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and confirm that we succeeded. I'm over here boasting how well we've done to separate the queens from the jacks, but I haven't actually shown you that we've done that. So let's go ahead and just flip over the cards. Oh, there's a couple of queens. And there are those notorious jacks. Okay, we succeeded, even though I had no clue as to where the queens were or the jacks were. So how is this possible? Okay, so let's quickly look at a kind of technical explanation. Now, I cannot fully explain all of this because that is what is covered in the playlist I mentioned about Bessey sequences and Quasi-Bessey sequences. There's a lot to talk about when we're talking about invariant structures and structure-preserving shuffles, okay? But I will give you enough so that you can perform this right away. In fact, if you just do what I did, it works every time. But let me at least give you a bird's eye view of what's happening. Okay, so we started with the Jack of Clubs, Queen of Spades, Queen of Hearts, Jack of Diamonds. Okay, so below that I have a 1001. This is called a Quasi-Bessey sequence of order 4. Okay, now this is a very special sequence of zeros and ones that is invariant up to inversion, and that just means the zeros and ones switch places, relative to many of the systematic shuffling procedures used today in card games and card magic. So let me just show you the ones that I did. So I did an LR shuffle right here. LR left, right. So I dealt left to right, and then we stacked left on right, or we can stack right on left. That will either preserve this structure or invert it. Once again, inversion just means zeros and ones switch places. In fact, in particular, let me just show you here. The inversion of this sequence would be 0, 1, 1, 0. Okay? So when we talk about the inversion of this sequence, is this right here. Okay? Next, I did a up jog in which I think I jogged forward the even position cards, and then you can randomly stack those two halves. That will either preserve this or invert it to that. I did a pharaoh in and a pharaoh out. Same thing there. It either preserves or inverts this structure. I did an Australian down under. In fact, I did another one at the end. That will actually preserve this structure here. I did a Chardelier 1, which is equivalent to a 50% cut. That actually inverts this structure here. I did push off pairs. I pushed off pairs of cards, and then you can randomly stack left on right or right on left. I'm just thinking now that I maybe skipped that one for some reason, but this is where you just push off the top two, the next two, random stack. Okay, so I can't remember if I actually did that one, but you can. And so that will either preserve or invert this Quasi-Bessey sequence. I dealt out into 4 piles where we're free to stack from left to right, right to left, or leapfrog. Okay, none of those will harm this structure. They will either preserve it or invert it. And then I did 2 identical hypercoats, and I gave you a choice to spell out clubs, hearts, spades, or diamonds, because each one of those would constitute a hypercoat, because each one of these has 5 but no more than 8 letters in their names. So we can spell out clubs twice, hearts twice, spades twice, diamonds twice. None of that will harm this structure. In fact, it actually brings it back to original states. It preserves it precisely. Okay, and so once again, we succeeded in this routine for the simple reason that we are not focused on particulars, but we are focused on structure and structure preservation or conversion. Okay, the individual cards we may know nothing about in terms of their location, but we know something about their relative location. In particular, the ending structure will either look like this, where you have a couple of jacks on the end, couple of queens in the middle, or you'll have a couple of queens on the end, couple of jacks in the middle. Well, to finish, what did I do? So if that's true, let's go ahead and just do that. If it's this or this, as just described, if we have something like this, and then you Klondike pairs to the table, you're going to be pairing up the jacks with the queens. But I haven't a clue which pile contained the jacks or the queens. That's the remarkable thing about dealing with structure and structure preservation instead of something like card tracking. Okay, we're not tracking any cards here. We're just keeping our eye on the structure of the packet at any moment in time and what a particular shuffle will do. Will it preserve it or invert it? Well, in our case here, we actually don't care if it preserves it or inverts it, because in the end, we're going to finish with two piles, even though I don't know which one's which, where one will be jacks, the other one will be queens. Okay, so I just wanted to put this video out as an encouragement for people to take a look at the invariant structures that I've discovered and shared with the world on my channel. And you can find it in my Bessey sequence and Quasi-Bessey sequence playlist. So thank you for watching, and take a look at other videos on the Absolute Math Magic channel.